Misty, what are the chances George Gascon's going to go to court with his little petition and have a judge say, yeah, no thanks, they stay in prison?
It certainly could happen, but keep in mind, it's not the habeas corpus petition. That's a whole other ballgame. Here you're talking about this California initiative specifically, where the factors that they're looking at are different. Are these individuals, were they subject to physical or emotional abuse? Would it be looked at in a different lens today? Are they rehabilitated? All of those are the factors that the judge is going to look at. So it's a different argument than what they lost on every single appeal and ultimately would be unlikely to be successful on habeas corpus. So the judge, look, the prosecutor's word goes a long way, most certainly does. And keep in mind, it's almost two-pronged here. The judge has to say, okay, they're eligible for parole. But then the parole board also has to say, okay, they're eligible for release based on the parole factor. So there's almost two other fail-safes in here about review of Gascon's recommendation without anything more.
Meantime, and I just want you all to quickly weigh in on that before we move on, but I thought it was very interesting, Jesse, that he admitted, yes, since the Netflix documentary came out.
Oh, my gosh.
I've been inundated, and we're just so overwhelmed that we have to get to it. And one of them got a college degree, and they've been model prisoners. I'm sorry, how many prisoners incarcerated right now are also making, you know, according to his own percentage, 50% have gone the straight and narrow. Does that mean shouldn't they all be resentenced, or just because they didn't have a Netflix series they're not going to be resentenced?
Not everybody gets this, right? And the idea that they're not the only ones running AA meetings, not the only ones getting college degrees, what kind of precedent does that set? But also I have to say, at least he's transparent, at least he's saying it's because of the documentary this is happening. I mean, at least he's being honest about that. And that's the problem. We have a system of laws, we have a court system, we have a jury. If we're allowing the TikTok generation, we're allowing public outcry to make decisions about whether, or influencing public officials about whether or not these people should be released. That's the danger that I see here. Because if you really look at the facts of the case, you read the Ninth Circuit opinion, which I did, I don't know if you would agree whether or not this is the right decision.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. This is, I mean, where does Kim Kardashian fall in the appellate process? Is it after the California Supreme Court, after the Ninth Circuit? Where does she get her ruling?
I think she took a law class.
And look, this was a documentary. It was entertaining. It was made by the same guy who made Glee, you know, the musical on TV. And there's a whole generation of people who think that it's real. Yeah. It's like, newsflash, folks, what's on TV is sometimes make-believe. And it was based entirely on uncorroborated allegations made by the defense. It's a gripping series. They did a great job. But there's a difference between the tried and true process of trial, experienced judges, good lawyers. They had Leslie Abramson, for goodness sakes, one of the best defense lawyers ever to walk the halls of a courthouse.
Yeah, she was amazing.
Yeah.
By the way, just so everybody knows, there's two things on Netflix on this.
Right.
One of them is the Glee mini-series, which is with actors. It's not a documentary.
Right.
Then there's also a documentary.
Right. And they're both pretty good. They're both pretty good in an entertaining way.
We invested a lot of time in this.
Yeah.
Misty, it's worth noting, the family, Menendez family, is not unanimous.
Right.
I've interviewed you know, Kitty's brother, Kitty's sister, sitting in the front row right there, supporting that. And she has said, you know, it took me a long time to accept that my brother-in-law was sexually abusing these boys, but I believe it now, and I think they should be released. Kitty's brother adamantly thinks that they killed Jose and Kitty for money.
Yes, and victims are allowed to speak in California.
And
in fact, they get
on
that opportunity. Yes. And today the reporting was that they're actually questioning a victim's advocate and the brother are questioning the veracity of that letter, like when it was written, because that's a whole other
easily
issue.
Proved? I mean, can't you do degradation of ink?
Well, I think we could see that happen in this hearing in the courtroom, to the extent that there's going to be an argument about whether or not this was the right result. The question is, though, Elizabeth, because the district attorney is basing this on these resentencing guidelines, not the habeas corpus petition,
he didn't even mention
not the new evidence. It depends on what the judge is going to actually, how far they will let them go, to the extent there are individuals who are contesting this result.
And let's not forget, Eric wrote that letter. Did he forget? You know, if he wrote it, if it's even real, Did he forget
Why
that he
didn't
wrote
he say, Andy, go look for the letter I
Right,
sent you?
and they had the power of subpoena and a whole investigative staff. And now it's turning up. This isn't like a video in Vegas that shows they weren't there and they're sitting next to an Elvis impersonator at the time of the crime. This is evidence and mitigation that the defendant himself, who lied to everybody about everything at the time, not just the sexual abuse, he wrote it. He knew about it. So now it's coming up, and now it's a game changer. A lot of people have a problem with that.
I also just need to point out, because I covered this story, and back when it happened in the trial, or detectives who worked on this case said it was one of the goriest murder scenes they had ever had to process.
And one thing for anybody who watched the Ryan Murphy show, the killing scene is graphic, but in real life it was worse because they didn't know the shots were coming. That's the difference. If you watch the show, you see Jose Menendez, who's played by, I forgot his name.
Are you doing a promo for Netflix?
Well, I'm just saying, he stands up and he goes, "What are you doing?" In real life, they had no idea the gunshots were coming. That's even more cold-blooded. And there's really no argument to say you were acting in self-defense if you're killing them from behind. It was a close shot
and let's not
blast
forget,
to the head.
He's absolutely right. These are Mossberg 12-gauge, which is a devastating weapon. But they went out, Lyle went out to the car and reloaded before he put the gun to his mother's cheek and literally, graphic here, blew her face off. So then there's an additional layer of premeditation, deliberation, and a gory scene.
Do you think they're going to have any trouble convincing a judge they're not a danger to society? Because that is something that is a standard that must be met.
I don't know. I mean, they're not going to have any new parents to murder for money. So arguably, they wouldn't be. But look, the judge can always, just like Jesse said, and Misty hit on this too, the judge can refuse this.
Or the judge could say it's 50.
Yep, 50 years.
It's 50. Then they're eligible for parole.
So another 15 years in prison before you're eligible even.
Correct. So the judge could take any of those actions. So it's not necessarily set in stone now that we have this recommendation.
So too soon for millennials on TikTok to celebrate?
To celebrate, yep.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I think it's interesting that he didn't mention Roy Rossello. He didn't mention the letter, even though that was a big part of his first press conference several weeks ago. Did they authenticate any of this? Did they look into this? Is that going to actually come into...
Did they authenticate any...
Did they authenticate the letter? Did they do a follow-up interview with Roy Rossello? This is the Menudo band member he was assaulted.
We should remind our audience, Menudo was a very popular boy band at the time. Jose Menendez was an executive in the movie in the music industry, very, very powerful, not well liked according to anybody who met him, apparently. But one of the members of this boy band has come forward to say he was also sexually molested by Jose Menendez. Okay, continue.
And my question is that part of the conversation in an upcoming hearing, or they say, listen, that we're not focusing on that. I know that was the evidence that came forward, the defense put it forward, but we're focusing more on, they're leading AA meetings, they're model prisoners, they got college degrees. We have 2 correctional officers who say they should be released. Because if they don't focus on that, it makes me question how much did they really look at this new evidence?
All right, here's a question, Matt. If you think this is all an election ploy, a ploy to win an election he's set to, by all accounts, by the polls, to lose in just, 12 days from now, what happens if he loses? Does the winner have to say, okay, let's go resentence these brothers, or can the new district attorney say, hey, forget about that?
Well, he gets to finish out his term till January. So even if he loses in November, it depends when the court sets the hearing. But
well, that has to be within 30 days of tomorrow. Unless
they waive it. So there are procedural mechanisms to put it out. And it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. I think that this will happen under Gascon's watch. This may be his swan song. I know the prosecutors in his office, as well as law enforcement in LA, certainly hope this is his last official act. But it'll be interesting to see.
We should note that his opponent, Misty, in the primary in this election, does not want to free the Menendez brothers, does not believe the Menendez brothers were victims of abuse, and believes the Menendez brothers are guilty of murder because they wanted their parents' money.
Yes. So if the court does not order, if the court does not order this within the time frame that Matt just spoke about, and there's no court orders, because keep in mind, hearing, when will that happen? Could it be punted back beyond that time frame? Certainly. And if there's no court order, then the new prosecutor can come in and withdraw. They can say that we don't want to do this. We're not in favor of it. And I think then we get into a whole sticky appellate issue about what's binding, what's not binding, and whatnot. But the new prosecutor would have the ability to say, this is not the recommendation of this office.
All right. Misty Marris, Jesse Weber, Matt Murphy, expert. I couldn't have had a smarter legal panel to break down the breaking news. Thank you so much, all three of you. Really appreciate it. All right.